In winter, millions of fans turn their attention to Australian rules football. A game as spectacular as it is ferocious.
People go to the football to watch physicality, and they love to watch collisions. It's something that they enjoy every week. You know, they talk about how there was the huge bumps.
But the excitement of the game's heavy collisions is now a major issue for the sport.
He's turned his body, he's in some trouble.
That is a hard hit.
We nicknamed him the bulldozer, pretty much. If he saw the ball, he went for it, and no one was getting in his way for it, no matter what he copped on the way.
55 goals, 33 over his career.
Renee Tuck's brother Shane spent almost a decade playing in the AFL as a hard-nosed midfielder for the Richmond Tigers. The son of legendary Hawthorn player Michael Tuck, he was destined to play at the highest level.
He always had a footy in his hand, always had a Sherrin, was always kicking it around, smashing up the house, and just had a genuine love, I think, for the game.
Did you ever get worried for him when he was out there playing?
I didn't, actually, because I knew how tough he really was. He was sort of maybe too tough for his own good at the end of the day, but he really enjoyed it, I think, and he never complained either, so he really enjoyed what he did.
After Shane Tuck's retirement, Renee said she soon noticed a marked change in her brother's behaviour.
He said to us, "I'm hearing voices, and they're not very nice." And that was when we became extremely concerned, because Shane wasn't a mentally unwell guy. He was a go-getter, and he didn't suffer anxiety or depression. He loved life, and he lived it to the full, how he played his football. So when he said there was some things going on, I was very concerned.
7 years after Shane Tuck hung up his boots, he was dead, taking his own life in 2020.
He was struggling for about 18 months every day to just stay here with us, because he knew how sad we'd be, but at the end of the day, it just got too much for him. Completely and utterly traumatising and soul-destroying and heartbreaking.
Within 48 hours of Shane's death, his brain was donated to the Brain Bank in Sydney, which is headed up by Dr. Michael Buckland.
It was very significant. He was young, and to see that level of disease, I'd never seen it before.
Dr. Buckland had been researching a brain disease known as CTE and its occurrence in footballers who'd experienced multiple concussions over the course of their career.
Shane's brain was the worst I'd seen in terms of pure CTE, and that came as a real shock.
CTE can only be diagnosed post-mortem after examining the brain and observing the build-up of a malignant protein known as tau.
In fact, when the scientist handed me the microscope slides to look at, and I didn't actually need the microscope to see immediately that there was dense accumulations of tau in exactly the right spots. He was a young man, and to have that level of disease was quite shocking.
Shane Tuck was the youngest known AFL player to have died with the disease.
A coronial inquest is now investigating the death and the AFL's concussion management. Now, the AFL has acknowledged CTE exists, and in 2014 it launched a survey involving hundreds of past players, in part to determine how widespread the disease might be.
They were trying to get as many players to undertake the survey, and they ended up with about 500 or 600 from my understanding.
Neuroscientist Alan Pearce alleges the AFL would give him access to former players so he could undertake a separate AFL-funded study into CTE.
So the idea was that I would be testing these players that were from the survey.
Alan Pearce claims the AFL delayed access to players.
They were adamant that they would send me the players, which didn't happen for about 18 months.
The league has strongly rejected these accusations. Now, 7:30 can reveal fresh claims that another research project into CTE, this time funded by taxpayers, was delayed.
In the first 3 years after discussions with the AFL, we got 6 players. We're aiming for 80.
In 2017, Professor Christopher Rowe received a $1 million grant for a landmark study on CTE to develop a diagnostic test for the disease.
I discussed this with the AFL and there were strong expressions of support. This was deemed to be a very worthwhile project. Unfortunately, in the 5 years since, it has been very frustrating trying to recruit patients through the AFL.
Professor Rowe alleges the AFL indicated it would support access to the register of 500 retired players, surveyed 3 years earlier.
It was part of the grant application that we said we would be able to access the players through that register because our contact with the AFL assured us that this would be possible. It turned out not to be.
Why do you think the AFL haven't been as helpful as you would have liked?
I think both sides of this argument have concerns about the findings of a possible diagnostic test.
In a statement, an AFL spokesperson said the league is now conducting an independent review of the work, research and advice provided by a medical expert, which will be finalised in due course. The results of the past players survey have never been released.
Sometimes I think, what if, what could have been?
It was a heavy knock, wasn't it?
Knee to the back of the head.
Cade Kolajasny was just 24 when he called time on his career.
So over that 7-year period, close to 15 concussions. The more I had, the worse, and the more prolonged the symptoms would be. A lot of headaches. I had an episode when I was playing of a frontal impact with the opposition player, and I had whiplash and my head jolted and it felt like my brain sort of moved around a bit, and I was cleared to play the following week.
Cade's twin brother Jake still plays in the AFL. He finds it difficult to watch.
It's been a really tough sort of period since then for me, having to give up a lifelong dream and start from scratch.
It's real, it's not going anywhere, and it is highly traumatic.
The Tucks now want to focus on helping families affected by CTE.
I would like to think that it is his legacy, that it's brought to public knowledge and that we're all a little bit more educated, because losing someone from them playing the sport they love doesn't add up and just doesn't need to be.
And if that story has raised any issues for you, you can call Lifeline on 13 11 14 or Beyond Blue on 1300 22 46 36.